October has come and gone, and it sucks. It's my favorite month, and it's always the one that goes by the fastest. Well, despite work, National Novel Writing Month, and a diet that's making me want to kill anyone who eats delicious fried foods in my presence, I still managed to play some games. As in the previous video, these are preliminary thoughts, usually far too shallow to call a full review. Some of them might end up getting full reviews in future, but for now, these are my impressions of the handful of games I got to play in October this year. This Is the Police 2 is a really interesting idea for a game, and I realize that the word interesting often equates to promising and ultimately a letdown, but I have to say, in my first couple of hours, it presented some cool ideas. The idea is that you're the sheriff of a small-town police station, and in an XCOM kind of way, you assign your teams to various calls, deal with their personal quirks, train them, and occasionally lead them in dangerous missions. It's a terrific notion. Usually, when you're playing a cop or some member of the police force, you spend all your time dodging bullets and killing mobsters, which, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun. But in This Is the Police 2, you're faced with the mundane aspects of the job. One of your guys comes in still drunk from the night before, and you have to decide, do you fire the guy and lose a valuable member? Do you send him home and look soft, or do you force him to work, taking the chance that he could hurt himself or somebody else? I like those difficult questions in games, and when you combine it with a pretty serviceable turn-based strategy element, it makes for entertaining gameplay. On the other hand, it includes a full-fledged story that, while well-performed and dramatically presented, is very long and feels completely disconnected from the game itself. It's an interesting take on police procedurals and strategy games alike. There isn't much to say about Mark of the Ninja Remastered, to be completely honest, but I had to include it on this month's list simply because this remaster just reminds me how damn fun this game is to play. I loved the original in 2012, and this amounts to just a polished and prettier version of that original game. For anyone who hasn't played it, Mark of the Ninja was sort of a big deal because it managed to combine stealth and side-scrolling action games in a way that was startlingly effective. The use of shadows and traps and noise are all lovingly recreated here, with a new coat of paint that looks terrific. Plus, it was totally free on Steam for those of us who owned the original, and that's more than a bargain, it's a steal. As far as reboots of classic franchises go, I find it very difficult to go wrong with what Crystal Dynamics has done in the past 5 years or so with Tomb Raider. The gorgeous vistas, the action, the brilliant performances, this is immediately where my mind goes when someone uses one of those dreaded terms like cinematic. I'm about a third of the way through Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and I can honestly say that if you liked the first two, you should definitely pick this one up. Like Rise of the Tomb Raider, this is basically more of the same, for better or for worse. The same gorgeous atmosphere, the same fun stealth mechanics, the same sort of challenging puzzles, the same horrifying death cutscenes, and the same ludo-narratively dissonant glee of murdering the fuck out of faceless soldiers while playing gentle comforter to those around you. There are some additions, like a far larger number of actual tombs to raid, which I'm quite happy about, but otherwise this is largely what most people have come to expect from Tomb Raiders in recent years. If that's your jam, pick it up. If not, you're not going to find any mold-breaking happenings in this entry. Is there any indie game series that has intrigued and excited me more than what Rusty Lake has been putting out in the past couple of years? The answer to that question is a resounding hell no, and Cube Escape Paradox is just another spooky, brilliant entry in a long list of spooky, brilliant entries. Beyond having some of the most enjoyable and creative puzzles I've ever seen in a game series, the Rusty Lake games also deal with themes in a way that leaves me befuddled, amused, and frightened all at once. It's become clear at this point that Cube Escape Paradox is dealing with the same overarching plotline as Rusty Lake titles gone by. What is that plotline? I don't have a fucking clue. This is Twin Peaks in a jam jar full of flies that all sound like your dead grandmother. It's morbid and funny and surreal, and I don't ever want Rusty Lake to stop putting out games, ever. I will support them until I am a skeleton in the ground, and then they can come and make a puzzle out of my bones. And yes, that is an open invitation, Rusty Lake. When I heard that a fourth Bard's Tale was coming out, I was suitably impressed. That series, while known well enough as a classic RPG of the 80s, wasn't something I expected would have much of a comeback. But I suppose if someone were to do it, it would be inXile. I've played a couple of hours, and so far, I just don't know. It's appropriate that this game is based on a classic series because visually it just feels old. It isn't ugly per se, but I've never been able to grasp why lower budget studios would make games where it's clear that they're kinda trying to be on the same page as the Skyrims of the world. Something more basic but stylized could have gone over just as well, and it wouldn't be so distracting. I will say that the music is just outstanding. It's a Celtic-infused soundtrack that could play perfectly over any number of RPGs, including your Wednesday night D&D game. The puzzles are interesting too, and I've been told to expect more of them. Apparently Bard's Tale 4 is more of a puzzler than a fighting RPG, which is good because the action is sort of also middle of the road. This one seems to be fairly polarizing among people who have played it, which makes sense in my mind because I feel polarized playing it. Sometimes I'm enjoying the mood that the story is setting, and sometimes I'm cringing at the voice acting. I'd love to say I'm going to come back to this, but it's already November, and Christ is my docket full. I'd like to hear from any other RPG fans who have delved a little deeper into this one. Let me know in the comments if you got the same impressions that I did. It's appropriate that I included Mark of the Ninja on this list because recent release The Swindle feels heavily inspired by it. Side-scrolling stealth action, only this time it takes place in a steampunk universe, and it's far more loose with its story. The idea is that you have 100 days until a new Big Brother-style security system is set up all over London, and you, the leader of a thieves guild of some sort, need to build up your strength and abilities in order to steal that very security system out from under Scotland Yard's noses. That's 100 days of heists, all in a procedurally generated series of houses that get tougher as you move up the ranks. It's quite fun, even if it lacks a level of polish that would make the game easier to handle and control. Certain movements feel clunky, and I was killed on more than one occasion without knowing exactly why I had. Also, anytime you do die, you get a new character, which would be really frustrating if it weren't for the fact that your new character still retains all the stats and upgrades that you've acquired up to that point, which made me wonder why I got a new character at all. Why not just let me design my own kick-ass Victorian thief and have his corpse get resurrected in my rocket ship or some damn thing? You can come up with a weird invention for something like that. Despite those complaints, it's an intriguing little game, and worth a look if you like taking stealth and breaking and entering into the realm of 2D. Yeah, this one couldn't really be avoided, could it? I'm not going to go into any major details here because I've only played 7 or 8 hours of Red Dead Redemption 2, and frankly that feels like just nicking the surface, a scratch on the paint. But I will say this game is wonderful. The writing is some of the best I've ever seen in a video game. The atmospheres are lush and breathtaking. That level of rockstar customization that we've all grown to love is totally there. And if I'm being completely honest, while GTA Online bores me to death after a few hours, Red Dead Online genuinely has me excited. Now, having said all that, I'm also going to say this because it feels necessary. Anyone who tells you that this is a 10 out of 10 game is stoned out of their minds on fanboyism and possibly PCP. Red Dead Redemption is a sublime example of a modern action-adventure game, but it is also slow. You'd better love those graphics, boy, because you're going to be staring at them as you ride your horse across a massive map, remembering the good old days of your sports car and Bootsy Collins on the radio in Los Santos. It has a frustrating control scheme, and I'm getting sick of waiting 3 seconds every time I loot something. Oh, and binary morality meters can just drown as far as I'm concerned. Why the hell can't I loot some random body I found without being told I'm a bad cowboy? He's not using those canned peaches. Why can't I have them? Huh? Am I saying that Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't the best game of 2018? Well, I don't know yet. I'm still not sure. It's definitely in the running. It's definitely amazing. But the people who are treating it like the second coming of Christ and his poker buddies need to find a new god. A god whose combat system doesn't suck. Still, it's not like I'm putting it down anytime soon.
Hey, Daddy, don't sink a little drinky. Daddy gets side and blue. Sneak a little drinky, sneakity-doo. Sneak a little drinky past you. Sneak a little drinky, sneakity-doo. Sneak a little drinky past you.